So I invite you for a silent word of prayer. Amen. So happy Sabbath once more. So the last time I was here, we were trying to understand about the daily. I hope you can remember. It's not so long. Uh, and because we didn't finish that study, I want to pick from where we left in our last class. So the title of my study was the daily. And I'm just going to give a simplistic overview of what we were able to cover. So, sorry. So the reason or the purpose for this study, I tried to explain that it has now become familiar for us to go back to the old studies and pick those models to try and explain what is happening today. So I said that this is one of the foundational studies of this movement. And we used to speak of the daily being taken away and something else being set up. And by understanding this subject, we were able to see that there are actually 4 versions of the daily. And I was able to list the 4 versions of the daily. That is in reference to the book of Daniel chapter 8. I think from verse 11 to verse what? To verse 12. So each verse there has a concept of the daily, but all those verses give us different versions of the daily. And so, if we are actually following the advanced light, this has resurfaced again. We have the daily being taken away and something else being set up. Based on the verse, one says the abomination that maketh desolate. So I was able to list, I'm not going to do that for now. And I said, for us to really understand what the daily is today and what is being set up today, we need first to go back to these studies and be able to understand what they were actually trying to teach us about. Are we together? So we went to the book of Daniel 8, verse 13 and 14. So I was able to demonstrate that verse 11 gives us a daily, verse 12 gives us a daily, and verse 13 also gives us a daily. And then there is Daniel chapter 11 verse 31 and Daniel 12:10. They also gives us a daily, and all those dailies are different things. And I was able to demonstrate that my focus is on the daily in Daniel 8 verse 13. So when you come to the story of Daniel 8 verse 13, there is a conversation there. So the first thing we saw is that Daniel is standing at the banks of a river. Which river? Ulai. Then there is a conversation. So there are 2 visions in the book of Daniel, and you can only distinguish this by looking at the senses. From verse 2 to verse 12, this is the vision that Daniel sees. It's the vision of the ram, the he-goat, and the horns. But when you go to verse 13 and 14, what will Daniel do? Daniel will now do what? Hear a conversation. So this is a different story from the story in Daniel 8 verse 2 to 12. And we were able to see the conversation that is there. It's about 2 saints. And I was able to draw a structure here that when you come to this verse, you need to understand the complexity of it. So Daniel will hear a saint speaking, and then there is another saint which will speak to this saint who is speaking, and we will not be told what this saint is speaking, but we will be told the another saint, and the another saint is a question that we'll ask, and the question is, how long shall be the vision? And we were able to break that down to how long is the vision concerning two powers, the daily and the transgression of desolation, and they are giving the sanctuary and the host to be trodden underfoot. And then verse 14, an answer is given. And I tried to demonstrate that this is not the direct answer to that question, because the answer given is unto 2,300 days, then the sanctuary shall be cleansed. And I think I was able to show some demonstration here that based on this principle that we see in the book of Revelation 13:11. So we see that there is a lamp, and what is associated with the lamp is what? Is what? The two horns. And then there is a dragon. And what is associated with a dragon is a what? So, and I spoke of the concept of juxtapositioning, because when you force this together, what you will actually see is that actually the lamb also has a mouth, and the dragon also has horns. But you are going to see contrasts. The way the lamb speaks is not the way the dragon speaks. And whatever these horns look like is not the same way these dragon's horns look like. So this is one kingdom, United States of America. And the nation speaks as the sixth, but the way it speaks is contrast to how this nation speaks as a dragon. And the same horns, republicanism and Protestantism, as Ellen White puts it, America still has the horns as a dragon, but you need to see that there are subtle differences. So what we actually see is you're not told of this and you're not told of this, but because the rule of juxtapositioning, it's to generate missing information, we're able to generate this information. And I tried to give the same demonstration when you come to the story of Daniel 8, 13 and 14. So here there is a saint speaking, and then there is another saint, and this saint will ask a question. And what is the question? How? And then the answer is given. And what is the answer given? What is the answer? It shall be for 2,300 days. So the question is, how long shall the daily and the transgression give the sanctuary to tread down underfoot the host and the sanctuary? So this is the answer given. And I tried to demonstrate that the question ought to have been, how long? Let me put it as the question, this one, ought to have received an answer. And I was able to demonstrate that the answer is not this one. Because what is the answer? For those who know, what is the answer? So you can see that this is an answer given, but it is not the question that was asked. Because the question ought to have been, how long shall the sanctuary be cleansed? And the answer is, it shall take 2,300. So I tried to demonstrate something like this. And I said, you will actually see that this is a different subject than this. Because Daniel will try to connect the two. And based on where Daniel stands in that verse, Daniel chapter 8 verse 1, it is the third year of King Belshazzar. And the third year of King Belshazzar is the year 538 BC. This is actually the same year that Babylon will fall, because it is the last year of King Belshazzar. And according to Daniel, he interprets the cleansing of the sanctuary as the restoration of the people of Judah from Babylonian captivity. Because in his mind, he understands the moment Nebuchadnezzar and his armies entered the sanctuary, they are heathens. What did they do? According to the law of Moses, they defiled the sanctuary. So they can only cleanse the sanctuary once they are done what? Restored back to Jerusalem. And so Daniel interprets the 2300 days to represent approximately 6 years. And from where he stands, it only remains 2 years for them to be set free. So this is the third year of Belshazzar, and it is also the first year of Darius the Mede. This is when they will bring down Babylon. This is the history of Cyrus, when he shall come and set them free. But Daniel tries to do the maths and realizes it's as if there is another 4 years that have been added. 4 plus 2, 6. And he cannot understand. So in the story of Daniel 9, what does Daniel has to do? He has to revisit the story of Jeremiah. I need to go back and understand what Jeremiah spoke about our captivity. And Daniel understands that actually Jeremiah meant 70 years. So captivity has not changed. But he understands that they are under a curse. The curse in the book of Leviticus. If you will not hearken unto me, I will punish you. And if you will not hearken to this, after this punishment, I will multiply your punishment. So Daniel perceives as if their punishment has been multiplied. So what he does in Daniel 9, he goes into a prayer, making intercession on behalf of the congregation. And in this moment, while Daniel is praying, what happens? Gabriel comes. From the very first time you started praying, I was sent to come and give you what? Understanding. And Angel Gabriel will try to solve this mess that Daniel has put himself into. And what Angel Gabriel will major more on is the vision of the 2300 days. So you can actually see Daniel chapter 9, I think, from verse 24 to 27. He will more major on the 2300 days prophecy. Though in 26 and 27, there will be some glimpse of this other story, the two desolating power. We will touch on that. So, and that's what you are able to cover. Then I said, my focus is not on this. My focus is on this because I'm dealing with the daily. And I tried to demonstrate that there are 3 groups that I will cover who tried to actually understand this story. I spoke of William Miller. I spoke of Hiram Edson. And I also spoke of us. And I said the first person to try and solve this mess will be William Miller. And I also spoke of another character called Hiram Edison. They will try to understand this story here. And what we were able to see is that they are all going to approach the same verse, but they are all going to have different stories. So we began by looking at William Miller's version. And William Miller understands one thing. The first concept that William Miller understands is the concept of 2 desolating powers. The same concept Hiram Edison will understand. So what Miller understands as the 2 desolating powers, he is able to parallel Daniel 8 verse 13. And Daniel 8:13 speaks of the daily. So we were able to read a verse from Ellen White, early writing 74, that the word sacrifice is what? A supplied word and does not belong to the text. So if you want to understand the correct meaning, you need to go to those who gave the judgment hour cry, the Millerites. And what they understand is that it's not the daily sacrifice, but daily desolation. Because the daily desolation, together with the transgression of desolation, they are all giving the sanctuary to be trodden underfoot. And this treading underfoot of the sanctuary and the host is by both powers. So this is a desolating power, this is a desolating power. And what they are actually destroying or desolating is the sanctuary and the host. So we also went to the 2 versions of the sanctuary. The first one in the Hebrew tongue is Mikdash. The second one is Kodesh. So Kodesh means a heavenly sanctuary. So if you go to the meaning of this sanctuary here, that is being trodden underfoot, is God's sanctuary. And a host is a group of people or an army. So this is God's people and their sanctuary being trodden underfoot. So, and what Miller understands is that for you to be able to solve how long, Miller takes us to a story in the book of Leviticus, chapter 26. And Miller understands that in Leviticus 26:18, this is where the answer is. So if you want to know the answer is in the book of Leviticus 26, according to William Miller. Because in Leviticus 26, I tried to give the understanding. God says that if I lay before you a blessing and a what? And if you will hearken unto me, there is a blessing. But if you will not, what will I give you? A curse. And if you go to the story, there are two types of the curses. I'm going to mark it as curse 1, and I'm going to mark this as curse 2. So Miller does not understand all this, but I'm just giving the basic understanding of that verse. Curse 2 is where Miller focuses on, because curse 2 is progressive in nature. And it is progressive in 4 steps. We will look upon that later. But Miller understands it simply that if you will not hearken unto you, I will chastise you how many times? 7 times. And according to William Miller, a time is equivalent to an what? An year. And a biblical year is how many days? 360 days. Miller is able to go to other portions of the Bible. Which other portion of the Bible gives the concept of 7 times? There is one familiar. Which one? Yes? Daniel? Daniel 4. What's the 7 times mentioned in Daniel 4? This is the story of who? And because Nebuchadnezzar is going to exalt himself against God, what will God do? Let 7 times pass over. So we have 7 times. And what this interprets to, they understand it to be 25-20 days where Nebuchadnezzar was made to eat grass. So he's able to have examples in the Bible which speak of 7 times. So if God has to scatter them 7 times, Miller understands 7 times 360 is equivalent to 25-20 days. But Miller has another understanding that a day is equals to a what? So if a day is equals to an year, 25-20 days is equivalent to 25-20 years. So what Miller understands is that if I can ascertain when these people are scattered, I can know when their scattering will come to an end. And Miller goes to history and is able to show that the God covenanted kingdom, Judah, was taken captive in which year? Right from when the verse says in Leviticus 26:18, I will break the pride of your what? God will break the pride of their what? Of their power. And this is the story of who? I think is it First Chronicles or Second Chronicles? 33:11 or 11:33. Someone can confirm. And this took place in the year 677. So Miller understands right from when the pride of their power is broken, this is when we have the reckoning of the 25-20. And with that, Miller is able to come to a conclusion that from 677, this takes us to 1844. So what he is able now to do is to outline how these two desolating powers will destroy, because this is the kingdom of Judah. And he's able to demonstrate from 677 up to 538, 1798. So basically here he had 43 because he used to mark 45 years. This after they corrected the mess and go to 1844. This is 1260 and this is 1215. This is the structure I was able to draw. So William Miller understands that this is what he calls the daily. He calls it daily 1, and this is what he calls daily 2. Then this is the abomination that maketh what? So Miller understands that the scattering of God's people began with Assyria, then it goes to Babylon, then it goes to Medo-Persia, then it goes to Greece, and then it goes to Rome. Then in 1798, when the abomination that maketh desolate is toppled down, the deadly wound, the European powers which were under the control of the literal horn, they are the ones who will be ruling in this history. So Miller understands this to be the European kings. He actually calls them the 10 kings of Revelation chapter 17. And this is how Miller understands the two desolating power. So in his understanding, this which is the second advent of Christ ought to be the restoration or the gathering moment. So as the sanctuary was to be cleansed, understanding this prophecy, which marked the coming of Christ to cleanse the earth with fire, he also understands this to be a moment of restoration, because God's church has been in a scattering under two desolating powers. I remember trying to demonstrate they understand the daily to be pagan powers. So this is the concept that Miller has, and he is able to justify this by also going to another story, the story of 2 Thessalonians chapter, is it 2, from verse 1. The falling away first, and then the man of sin is revealed. So these are the arguments that William Miller was trying to give. And we saw that when Hiram Edison comes to the same prophecy, Hiram Edison disagrees with what Miller says, because Hiram Edison suggests this is not the beginning of the scattering, because once the curse was given, the curse was not given to Judah alone, but the curse was actually given to who? The entire kingdom of Israel, the 12 tribes, not the 2 tribes. So if at all we need to begin reckoning the 25-20, we need to focus on when we have the first scattering. And the first scattering is not for Judah, but it is for who? It's for Ephraim. So we were able to draw another structure here. And according to Hiram Edison, he is able to go to the book of Isaiah chapter 7 and 8. So Edison agrees with the concept of the two desolating powers. They know that these two powers are pagan powers. So, and Edison's problem is this cannot be the reckoning point, the beginning of the reckoning of the 25-20, because in 723 BC, this is when actually Judah was, Ephraim was scattered. And when the law was given, Ephraim was part of the kingdom. So, disagreeing with Miller, he also argues, I don't see any restoration. Remember, the problem is Edison is here, 1856. And Edison is looking backwards and asking, what happened in 1844? What restoration did we see in 1844? Nothing. So he's able to demonstrate that the actual 25-20 begins in 723, and this is for Ephraim, and actually ends where? In 1798. And he actually demonstrates that the fall of the papacy, this was the actual deliverance. So his argument is that if you look at the concept of the two desolating powers, is that each power will try to desolate God's people. So this is the daily, and this is the abomination that maketh desolate. And he's able to demonstrate that the daily is Assyria, Babylon, Medo-Persia, Greece, and Rome. And then this is the papacy. And he's able to demonstrate we cannot have this argument that the daily fast will rule and then allow the abomination that maketh desolate to rule, and then the daily comes back. If the daily is taken away, it has to be taken away completely. It will not come back. So his argument is the daily is actually taken away and it will not come back. When the abomination takes over, this is the deliverance of God's people at the time of the end. And he's able to quote Daniel 8, I think from verse 16, that the vision shall be at the time of the end. So this is Edison's argument, and you get this from his article, The Times of the Gentiles. So I'm just going fast because this is just a summary of what we did in our last class. So we were able to demonstrate how William Miller understands and how Hiram Edison understands. And we said that both of them could not actually agree, because Edison's version, you can actually see they have similar patterns and principles, but the reckoning point is different, the end point is different when you compare it with that of William Miller, and the arguments have subtle differences because Edison has to justify why he disagrees with William Miller's version. So we said that us, our burden, has always been trying to harmonize what Edison provides and what William Miller provides, because we give the argument, had they reconciled their studies, what would they have seen? They could have seen more light, but because it ended up being so much controversial to a point where when Edison presents his work in 1856, he actually claims, I didn't even have enough time to exhaust the class. I'm just giving you my thoughts. This is not my stand, but I want you to put to scrutiny what I'm presenting. And because he does not finish this work, neither does the church agree, what will James White, the leader of the church, decide? Why don't we discard this controversial subject? And that's how they begin to deviate from the 25-20 prophecy. But what we will do, we will come back and revisit their work, and we will try to see more light. So I think that's what I was able to cover in my last class. If I forgot other concepts, I think they will come up. Is there anyone who wants to say something? So today I want to pick from here. And I want to suggest, I don't know whether I should rub my board. This is just a review of the past work. Okay. Mm-hmm.
In the review of the movie,
According to?
According to the verse
8, 11 to 13, yeah?
He said that here somewhere Daniel tried to interpret according to him, not according to the faith. I know that.
Okay.
What is the faith speaking to another faith? And it is an answer to that faith. I don't know if it was Daniel who was Daniel is reporting the vision.
Yes.
Yeah. He's reporting the vision.
Yes.
Answer of a faith to the other faith.
Yes.
And the answer of the 12 billion
yes.
Is from this one, is from the other faith.
Yes. Yes.
So, but it's Daniel reporting.
Yes.
Now the question is, yeah, it is clear the answer of the 12 billion does not cover the question. Does not cover the question it is asked. Now, I'm about the question how was it deliberate?
Deliberating.
Was it deliberate that the answer
should be different from the question asked. Okay, I think what I can say is that the first question I would ask myself, why would these two saints have a conversation in the presence of Daniel? And I tend to think it's because they want Daniel to understand something, not Daniel, us. Daniel is just a symbol there. So these are two different prophecies that I would say actually complement one another. Remember, the reason why Miller has a strong argument for the coming of Christ is because Miller has prophetic periods that agree. And actually, Miller has three, it's called a chain of truth. Ellen White puts it as a chain of truth. And Miller has all these studies complementing one another. If my memory serves me right, I remember we had a convocation around 2019, and Festus was presenting, and Festus was giving us the story of the midnight cry. I remember we were in a room in aviation, and Festus was trying to demonstrate how Samuel Snow's message progressively complemented one another. I wish Festus was here if you can remember. He first gave us the first argument Snow had. We're in the 6,000th year. We are now going to the 7,000. So they understand that to be the end of the world. So this was an awakening call. We are coming to the end. And then Festus was able to demonstrate that Snow's second argument was why the year 1844. The year. And there are actually 3 time prophecies that gave proof for the year. The first one was the 2520, the other one was the 1335, and the other one was the 2300 days. Then he also demonstrated Snow's next argument was not just the year, but Snow is going exactly to the what? To the month. Why October? And the reason why Snow goes to October, because he's able to look at the types and the antitypes, the feasts, that if the spring feast were fulfilled to the very same month, the autumn feast will have the same. And he also was able to demonstrate through the same that why actually October 22nd. The reason why Festus did this study, because it was a comparison with the same progression with the midnight cry message. I don't know how many remember such a study, but I always keep good records of those who present. So the 2520 was a complement to Miller's message. So it is not a coincidence that the angel gives two different prophecies, but I say they complemented one another. So, and the argument Miller was able to draw is that this was the deliverance. God is coming to gather. And this spoke about the earth being cleansed. So he is able to form a good narrative by combining the two prophecies, so they complement. So the angel is giving them because there is a connection with the two. But you also need to understand they are all dealing with two different subjects. One is dealing with the cleansing of a sanctuary, one is dealing with the gathering. We know that actually this is dealing with investigative judgment, and this is dealing with scattering and gathering. So they actually complement one another. Yes?
Like what I believe what pioneers are saying, like this person is asking the question, another person, and then another person receives the answer instantly.
Yes.
Then you say, okay, that is the answer of this question. But if like there was I'm Daniel, I'm asking my own question, and this other person is asking their own question, and then my question is answered, but my question is not written, recorded here, but I see the answer. But the question for the other person is written, but they don't see the answer. Like if I was an English, if I was someone who read the text in English, I would like maybe there is some information left out, maybe not recorded. Somewhere maybe Daniel is asking their own question, someone else is asking. Maybe Daniel I'm saying, tell me about 2300 years, something like that. And then the same is saying, no, tell me about the 2520.
Okay, I will try to think the way you are thinking. Because when the verse says, Saint one was already speaking, right? But you're not told what he said.
Yes.
Then the verse says, and another saint spoke to that certain saint, which, whatever that saint was speaking, we don't know. That's why I put the structure here to show there must be another conversation that we don't have. And I put the concept to show maybe that was the question that was being asked. And the question was, how long shall the sanctuary, And the answer is the 2300. But we will deal with that later, because I want to go to the concept of geography. And you're going to see the conversation we are having in Daniel 8 is the same conversation we are having in Daniel 12. Daniel is still at the banks of a river, and there are two saints in a conversation. And here now, Daniel will have a chance to ask for himself, and the answer will be given. But the problem is that he will still not understand. He's only let on, you go your way now. You can't understand. We know why, but we will come to that. So, because of the interest of time, I just want to speak about us. So, how do we solve the mess? How do we solve this mystery between what Miller's work is and what Edison's work is? And I'm going to suggest we will go to gather the answers back to the verse. So I want us to go back to Daniel 8. And I want us to see verse 15. So the first thing we are going to understand for ourselves, the first concept that we understand is that we will understand about the two ends. That's the first thing we will understand, that there are actually two ends. And I'm going to prove that. So, verse 15 of Daniel 8. And it came to pass, when I, even Daniel, had seen the vision and sought for the meaning, then there stood before me as the appearance of a man. And I heard a man's voice between the banks of Ulai, which called and said, Gabriel, make this man understand the vision. Verse 17, so he came near where I stood, and when he came, I was afraid, and fell upon my face. But he said unto me, understand, O son of man, for at the time of the end shall be the what? So, what's the first concept Daniel is told? When will be the vision? At the time of the end shall be the vision. So that's the first thing we need to see. Let's continue reading. Now, as he was speaking with me, I was in deep sleep on my face towards the ground. But he touched me and set me upright. Okay, for curiosity, what did we call that experience? For those who remember, where you are weak and you are touched. No. Chazon is the longest vision, complete vision. Then there is Mare, which is a snapshot of a vision. So the 2300 days is the complete vision. 70 weeks is the Mare snapshot. And then there is the other one, we call it what? Mara. Mara is that experience, for those who remember. So Daniel has the Mara experience. He touched me and set me upright. Verse 19. And he said, behold, I will make thee know what shall be the what? What shall be? What shall be? I will make you know what shall be the last end of what? I will make you know what shall be the last end of indignation. And this is where we apply the concept. If we have the last end, so Gabriel will make him understand the last end. So if there is the last end, what must you know? There must be the first end of indignation. That's why I'm calling it the concept of the two ends. So we are going to realize that there is the last end and there is the first end. And the structure we used to draw is assuming this is a race. This is the finish line. And you have this person here and this person here. So this is the first and this is the last. So when they get to the finish line, so this is the one who gets to the end. First end, last end. Are we together? So it's this concept. So if we understand there is the first end and the last end, so there is an indignation that comes to an end at first, and there is another one which comes at the last. So that's how we begin solving Miller's work and Edison's work. Are we together? Then we continue. I will make you know what shall be the last end. And what does the angel speak about the last end? He says, for at the time appointed, the end shall So this last end, what does the angel call it? Time appointed. And now you're going to be able to solve the problems. In the beginning, the vision shall be at the time of. So we are going to understand another concept. There are two times. And the two times is, the first one is what is called the time of the, and the other one is what is called what? Time. And if you are a clever student, you can connect these two. You'll realize that the first end is the time of the end, and the last end is the time appointed. Are we together? So you're saying no. Maybe you can say why you are. You can speak up your mind. Okay, forget about this, but I'm saying there are two times. Don't connect. I will help you to connect. I'm saying if you are clever. I'm not saying that if you can't, you are not clever. Don't take it that. So, all I mean is that there are those who can directly see. There's someone who really needs that clarity, and that is the most important actually. So, no, you don't just buy things. So, I'm saying we can see there are two ends. First end, last end. Gabriel will make Daniel understand the last end of indignation, which he says, for the vision shall be at the time appointed. Then I'm saying you need to understand there are two times mentioned. One is called the time of the end, and the other one is called the time appointed. And that is the information we can actually gather from that story. Because in the next verse, Gabriel will start speaking about the ram, the he goat, the other vision. So that's the first concept we need to derive from Daniel. We are trying to solve the mess, Edison's work and Miller's work. So that's the first thing I want us to see. There is the first end and there is the last end. And it's the first end of indignation, last end of indignation. I remember we used to go to an extra mile and define what indignation is. And what indignation is what? The anger of the Lord. It's God who is actually punishing them. We used to understand that the two desolating powers have been given this commission to punish God's people, his people and the sanctuary, because of their rebellion, because of the curse in the law of Moses. So, after understanding that, the other concept I want us to see is the concept of geography. So, and I'm going to suggest we do not understand geography literally, but we understand geography what? Spiritually. Let me explain. So, when you go to the Millerites, and I'm going to give an example, Daniel 11:40. One of the concepts they will use to understand the verse is geography. Literally, whoever has control on the north is Babylon, and whoever has control on the south is who? Egypt. Literally, when you come to 1798, who controls the north? Who is on that geographical location? Turkey. He's the king of the north. Who is on the geographical location of Egypt? Egypt itself. He's the king of the south. They can understand that. But I'm going to give another example of how we understand the story spiritually. And I'm going to call the 144K. I hope this won't be controversial and it won't open up another study. But when you go to the story of Revelation 16, Revelation 16, verse 13. So, Revelation 16, verse 13. Someone can read for me.
And I saw three unclean spirits, frogs come out of the mouth of the dragon, and out of the mouth of the beast, and out of the mouth of the horns of God.
So there are three unclean what? Spirits. The first spirit comes from the mouth of the dragon. Continue reading. The false prophet and the what? And the beast.
For they are the spirits of devils, working miracles, which go forth unto the kings of the earth and of the whole world, to gather them for the battle of that great day of God Almighty. Behold, I come as a thief, and blessed is he that watcheth, and keepeth his garments, lest he walk naked, and they see his shame. And he gathered them together into a place in the Hebrew tongue, Armageddon.
Yeah. So, to cut the story short, we have these three entities here, and their work is to gather nations for the battle of the Lord. It's in a place called what? Armageddon in Hebrew tongue. And this is one of the concepts we use, geography, to solve this mess. Because this place, Armageddon, so you need to look at what is happening here. I'm going to call this spiritual, and I'm going to call this natural. And when you come to the natural story, when you come to the spiritual story, what you're going to see is the dragon, the beast, and the false prophet. And these three are going into a battle. This is called the Battle of Armageddon. I hope this is a familiar term. And you're not told who they are fighting with. Actually, the verse says they are fighting against the Lord, and the Lord will defeat them. Are we together? But I want to suggest you can take this pictorial representation and go back to geography in another portion of the Bible, and you can get the same story. And when you do that, you can actually be able to understand what is actually happening here. And what is the most important word that you really need to follow? It's this term. Because you need to go to the valley of Armageddon. What is so common with this valley? It was the battlefield in the old times. Are we together? In the Bible, many kingdoms selected this place to come for war. But the story that has many patterns, many properties that fit this is the story in the book of, is that 2 Kings chapter 19. And in the story of 2 Kings chapter 19, you have a story between Elijah and who? So Elijah is on a mountain. He has to come down to a valley. And when he comes down to a valley, who is Elijah fighting against? Who is the king? Is it Ahab? And Ahab, the king, has another group, the Baal prophets. But Ahab is not fighting his own personal war. Who is the most problematic person for Elijah? Jezebel. So Ahab is the dragon. These are the false prophet, and this is the beast. And they are fighting against the true prophet. And in this story, who is working miracles? Elijah. Sindio, he is able to make fire come down from heaven, and the Baal prophets, the false prophets, cannot. And all of them will have to be executed. But when you come to the spiritual story, you are going to see it's the same story. So you know that this Lord here, the proxy, is the true prophet. And there is a conflict taking place, and here they cannot work miracles. Now the false prophets have learned a lesson. If you work miracles, you eliminate whoever cannot work. So in the story of Revelation 13, you know that this is the false prophet who is able to bring fire from heaven, just like Elijah was able to do. So when you take this is a concept, geography, and you can actually see it in a spiritual sense. We do not have a literal valley of Armageddon, but this becomes a connecting link to help us solve the mess. And what we need to look at is a story which has the same properties. And when you align the two stories together, you're able to feel and see a lot of missing information. So if you want to unlock the story of Revelation 16, you need to be more conversant with the story of 2 Kings 19. This is one example of how you use the geographical concept. So you need to take the concept of geography, and I'm suggesting the story I'm dealing with, the story in Daniel 8 is the story in Daniel 12. And I can give a few properties. Daniel is at the banks of a river. Which river is this? This is River Ulai. In Daniel 12, Daniel is at the banks of a river. Which river is that? And in the same banks of a river, there is a conversation between two saints. And I'm saying you are going to see a conversation, and we are going to see two saints. Now the most interesting thing is that the question is the same. How long? How long? So I'm saying the same story we see in Daniel 8 is repeated in Daniel 12. And when you bring the two together, it opens up the entire story of the two desolating powers. So you need to understand that Daniel 8 and 9 will only deal with the vision of the 2300 days. But the same story is repeated elsewhere, same expression, and now the story dealt with is the concept of the two desolating powers. So the story of Daniel chapter 12 is the story of two desolating powers. And because I don't have enough time to demonstrate this, you will actually see that the story of Daniel 12 begins where? For those who can remember, we used to argue that Daniel 10 to 12 is what? Is what? It's one vision. So it's in Daniel 10 where you can read for me, Daniel 10 verse 4, actually from verse 1.
The third year of Cyrus, king of Persia.
So this is the third year of Cyrus. Which year is that? 5? Yes? It's 536. It is the third year of Cyrus as king of Persia, right? But the first year of Cyrus as king of both Medes and Persia. This is when Darius the Mede has died. So 538 they took Babylon. Darius rules for 2 years. Cyrus is made king for Persia, but now it is his third year still ruling Persia. But it is also first year in charge of both Medes and Persia. This is the fulfillment of what we see in Daniel 8. One horn becomes now higher than the other. One kingdom becomes more powerful than the other. Just read now.
The third year of Cyrus, king of Persia, a thing was revealed unto Daniel.
Yes.
His name was called Belteshazzar.
Sorry.
The thing was true, but the time appointed was long.
So something is revealed, the thing is true, but time appointed is what? And for those who remember, we used to understand that this is the Kazon vision. This is the complete vision. This is the understanding of the story in Daniel chapter 8 concerning the two desolating powers. Continue.
But the time appointed was long, and he understood the vision and, had understanding of he understood the thing and had understanding of the vision. In those days, I, Daniel, was mourning 3 full weeks. I ate no pleasant bread, neither came flesh nor wine in my mouth, neither did I anoint myself at all, till 3 whole weeks were fulfilled. And in the 4th and 20th day of the first month, as I was by the side of the great river, which is biblical, then I lifted up my eyes and looked, and behold, a certain man clothed in linen, whose loins were girded with fine gold of His body also was like the burial, and his face as the appearance of lightning, and his eyes as lamps of fire, and his arms and his feet like in color in polished brass, and his voice, and the voice of his words like the voice of a multitude.
Yeah. So Daniel has an understanding of a vision, but the time appointed is what? Is long. And he tells us that he's at the banks of a river, which is River Hiddekel, as I tried to demonstrate. So I just want to cut the story short and suggest they are going to have a conversation, some experiences there, and I just want to show where verse 19. You can begin reading from verse 19.
And said, O man greatly beloved,
Mhm.
fear not,
Mhm.
peace be unto thee, be strong, yea, be strong. And when he had spoken unto me, I was strengthened, and said, Let my Lord speak, for you have strengthened me.
Yes.
Then said he, Knowest thou wherefore I come unto thee? And now will I return to fight with the prince of Persia, and when I am gone forth, lo, the prince of Persia shall come.
So the question is, do you know I have come to you? And where is the answer? Verse 21. Why is the angel coming to Daniel? Read.
But I will show thee that which is noted in the scripture of truth.
Gabriel has come to explain to Daniel that which is noted in the scripture of what? Truth.
And there is none that holdeth with me in these things but Michael and twins.
Yes.
11.
Yes. So before you read, so you are going to see that right from verse 19, it is Gabriel who is speaking. Are we together? So in 11 chapter 1, it is just a continuation of Gabriel's words. Are we together? So that's why we call it one vision. Because when Gabriel begins to explain what is noted in the scripture of truth, Gabriel will go until Daniel 12 in the last verse. So all those words are the words of Angel Gabriel. And it's the explanation of what is noted in the scripture of truth. So you can just read verse 1 alone and verse 2.
Also I, in the first year of Darius the Mede, even I stood to confirm and to strengthen him. And now will I show thee the truth. Behold, there shall stand up yet 3 kings in Persia, and the fourth shall be far richer than they all. And by the strength of his riches he shall staff all against the realm of Persia.
So I'm suggesting the story explained in Daniel 11 to 12 is the story of what? What is this? If you remember the last class, what did I equate this to be? Yes? The daily. Good. Because I said Daniel 8:12, what is the version of the daily there? It is these powers. So what is Angel Gabriel explaining to Daniel from Daniel 11? So if you want to know what is the daily, it is that explanation there from 11:1 to 12. So that is the entire daily. Are we together? So, and he will not just speak about the daily, because all these kingdoms is the daily. So the story of Daniel 11 is the story of what? The daily. So, and you're going to see, as much as he speaks, this is the daily, as much as he speaks of the daily, there is a portion also that he will speak about the abomination that maketh what? Desolate. He will speak about the people of God being scattered for times and half a time. So, if you want to understand the whole story of Daniel 8, verse 13, the 2 desolating powers, you need to be conversant with the entire chapter of Daniel 11. That is the daily. And that is what is noted in the scripture of truth. And that is what Daniel actually saw and did what? Understood. But there are concepts in the story that Daniel did not understand. And so, this is what will attract a conversation in Daniel 12. Because the bits that Daniel don't understand will be revealed to him, but he will be told those things are sealed until when? The time of the end. So that's the first thing I really wanted us to see. And so when you continue reading the entire story, it is the story of the daily. So that's the concept I really wanted us to see. That the entire story from Daniel 11 to 12 is the story of the daily. So I want us to go back to our story, and I'm saying in Daniel 8, there is a conversation that is so similar to Daniel 12, and the connecting link that I have is geography. There are properties here which are the same properties here, and this will help us solve our mystery, the concept of the 2 desolating powers. And if you're able to solve that mess and understand the natural, then we will now come to our dispensation today and ask ourselves, what is the daily and how is it taken away? And what is the abomination that maketh desolate, and how is it done what? Set up. Are we together? Bearing in mind, how many versions do we have? 4. And each version has its own application. So maybe in next class, I'll have time, we will now look at another version, because I said I will only focus on one version of the daily. Then we will go to other versions and see. One is a crown, the other one is the Visigoths, the other one is these entities, the other one is the 3 horns, and we will see how all those are taken away. So for now, if you want to understand how the daily is taken away, the taking away is the overturning and overturning and overturning of these kingdoms. Are we together? That is the taking away of the daily in Daniel 8:12, because the daily is all these powers, and the taking away is progressive in nature. So back to the story of Daniel 8. I have 13 minutes. So coming to Daniel 8 and comparing it to Daniel 12. So let's go to Daniel 12 and see what we can gather from there. Which verse should I go to? It's 12 verse. Yes? Verse 5. So I hope we can read together, or someone can read for me.
Thou, O Daniel, nimeanza kwa
5.
Then I, Daniel, looked, and behold, there stood at the two, the one on this side of the bank of the river, and the other on the other side of the bank of the river.
So hold your thoughts on that. Daniel sees what? 2. Then there is 1 on this side of the bank, and then there is the other on that side. So let's go to Daniel 8:13 and see what Daniel says. And then I heard one saint speaking. So Daniel speaks of one saint, and then he speaks of what? And another saint. So you can see one saint, another, one saint, another. Can you really see the comparison? They are so similar. So continue reading.
Verse 6 says, and one said to the man clothed in linen.
So here, who is speaking? I'm going to put this as the code for our identification. One and another. So when you hear one, so this is the one. He's the one who is going to do what? To speak. And what does he speak?
How long shall it be the end of these wonders?
So what is the speaking? Is a question. Can you really see that? And what is the question? How long shall it be to the end of these wonders? So let's go back to the story in Daniel 8. What is the question asked? And I heard one saint speaking, and another saint said unto that certain saint which speak. So here it's the another who's asked, and he asks a question. What is the question asked in Daniel 8? How long shall the daily and the transgression of, so this I'm going to mark daily desolation and the transgression of desolation, and their work is to tread underfoot. And you know what they are treading underfoot? The sanctuary and the host. It's how long? Now let's see the answer. Continue reading.
Verse 7 says, and I had the man clothed in linen, which was upon the waters of the river.
So if you are going to see it clearly, before he was on the other bank, and now he's being told he's on the waters, right? He's actually crossing. He was just approaching. Now, as we continue reading, he will actually be on the same side. So you can actually tell who is the one who was on this side. because Daniel was already in a conversation with Gabriel. So the one is always Gabriel. The another is always Christ. Are we together? So it's now Christ who is approaching. And the one in linen, who is Christ, responds. What does the response look like?
And I had the man wrapped in linen, which was upon the waters of the river, when he held up his right hand and his left hand unto heaven, and swear by him that liveth forever, that it shall be for a time, times and a half.
So what is the answer? It shall be for time, times, and half a. So what is equivalent to this symbology here? So how long shall the two desolating powers? So the question is, how long shall be the end of these wonders? So what are the wonders? If you can connect, what are the wonders? The treading underfoot of the sanctuary and the, what is the answer given? 12:60. Can you really see the connection of the two prophecies? Kitu gani? Kama hii enda unilete. So the answer given is an answer. So you can see these wonders is the repeated concept of how long shall these two powers tread underfoot. And the answer given now is the answer given in reference to the question asked. Can you really see that? But in the story of Daniel 8, it was totally a different subject. The answer was given was in reference to the 2300 days. But now in Daniel 12, the answer is exactly what the questionnaire needed. And you can finish reading it. It shall be for times, and the dividing of time.
And when he shall have accomplished to scatter the cloud of the holy people.
So there is a he, and what is the he doing? Scattering what? The holy people, yes?
All things shall be finished.
That is the end. When he, so there is a power who is the he. So the problem we have, we don't know who the he is, because the he might be the daily or might be the what? The transgression of desolation, because there are two powers. But the answer given is only on a he. Can you really see that? Continue reading.
Verse 8 says, and I heard but understood not.
Daniel has a problem. Even this one he can't understand.
Then said I, oh my Lord.
Now Daniel will not keep quiet. Now we have a third person in a conversation, and I'm going to suggest the conversation here now turns up to be against Daniel and the one he's calling my Lord. Can you really see that? And Daniel asks the question now for himself. What is the question?
What shall the end of these things? What shall be the end of these things?
What shall be the end of these things? What are these things? If you can see it. The wonders are the things, are the treading underfoot. Can you really see that? Now it's Daniel asking for himself, what shall be the end of these things? Now let's look at the answer. What's the answer? Can continue reading.
And he said, go thy way, Daniel.
So go thy way, Daniel.
For the words are closed up and sealed.
The reason why you can't understand, it's because it is sealed. Continue.
For the words are closed up and sealed till the time of the end.
Words are closed and sealed until when? So the problem with Daniel is that he cannot understand, because this is when the words will be unsealed at the time of the end. Continue reading.
Many shall be purified.
So
made white.
when that time comes, we will have two classes. Many, yes,
Shall be purified and made white.
yes,
And tried.
yes,
But the wicked shall do wickedly,
yes.
and none of the wicked shall understand.
So if the wicked shall not understand, who will understand? The many and the wise. Can you really see that? So the reason why Daniel cannot understand these things, it's because they are all sealed until the time of the end. So you can actually see, as much as Daniel tries to understand, Daniel cannot actually understand, because everything is unsealed when? At the time of the end. But remember, he asked the question, and the first thing he's told, by the way, you can't understand. You are not the many. Are we together? So who is Daniel? He's the wicked. That's correct. Because he cannot understand. Continue. Yes?
But
A question?
how are we saying Daniel is the wicked, and we are saying these two classes begin here at the time of the end? It's not yet the time of the end.
Okay, I understand your concern is genuine. Daniel cannot actually understand. I just put it, if he cannot understand, okay, someone somewhere said Daniel must be the wicked, but I understand you cannot call him wicked because he actually can't understand. Yeah, it's sealed.
That was my question.
Okay, I solved it. Continue.
Verse 11 says,
Yes.
and from the time of the daily sacrifice shall be taken away.
Now listen, Daniel asked a question, what will now be given? First is, you cannot understand, but despite you not being able to understand, I will still give you the explanation. Are we together? So what is the explanation? What is the story about? The daily. Can you really see the story? Now Daniel will be given the answer. And what is the answer? He is told, what you need to understand is the daily being taken. And when the verse says from, it's because what Daniel is given is the beginning point. Can you really see that? Because there is a time period that will be given. And I'm going to draw this structure here. From the time that the daily shall be taken away. So I'm going to suggest this. Let me put it there. This is when the daily is taken away. Continue.
And the abomination that maketh desolate set up.
And then there is, after the daily is taken, then there is the abomination being what? Set up.
There shall be 1,290 days.
So from the taking away of the daily, it takes us to 1,290 what? Days.
Blessed is he that waiteth and cometh to the 1,305 and 30 days.
So just a minute, I want to put it better. So this is when the daily is taken away. And then we have the abomination that make desolate being set up. And we are being told that here, this is 1,290 days. And then he's saying there is a blessing to those who wait. So from here, this is the moment of waiting. Blessed, those who waited have a blessing. And they have to wait for how long? They have to come to 1,335. If you make the addition, blessed is he that waiteth and cometh to, you put 1,300, that is 1,300, and 5, 1,305, and 30, 1,335. Can you really see that? So blessed is he that waited. So if you make good maths, 1,335, you minus 1,290, which, what is the waiting period? 45 years. And it is this small period here, 45 years. This was the moment of waiting. Blessed is he that waited and cometh to that time. Just finish reading.
Blessed is he that waiteth and cometh to 1,305 and 30 days.
Yes.
But go thou thy way till the end be, for thou shalt rest and stand in thy lots at the end of the days.
Go your way, Daniel. These things are sealed. For you shall die, but you shall come back alive. And when Daniel returns, he will stand in his lot and now do what? Understand. So, because of time, I actually, my time is up. Because of time, to cut the story short, you need to understand all these stories. I hope you can really see how Daniel is connected. And the moment you see this conversation is dealing with the two desolating powers, I'm going to suggest When is the daily taken away? According to the understanding of the pioneers. 508. And when is the abomination that maketh desolate? 538 AD. So there is a 30-year waiting period for the abomination that maketh desolate to be set up. And you are going to actually see from 508 adding 1290 gives you which year? 17. And there is a blessing to those who waited 45 years later, which takes you to which year? So you know it's 1843 because it's 45 years. So this time prophecy was actually determined to end in 1843 because this is which way mark is this? This is April 19, 1844, right? When the entire year 1843 came to an end. And what was the blessing? They were to realize that actually Christ delay, the tarrying time, that delay that took place there was to flush out fanaticism. When the bridegroom tarried, they all slumber and sleep. There ought to be a cry that awakens everyone, and it is this period of uncertainty that separates the two classes. The blessing is to those who really have extra oil to be able to discern the actual coming of the bridegroom. So just to give a summary as we close. So we are dealing with the daily. And for us to really understand the application of the daily today, we need to be able to juggle all these concepts and understand how we used to understand the concept of the daily. And we need to see Miller's work and Hiram Edison's work. They both approach it in two different ways. And this makes them not agree. Actually, the reason why Edison is given this work by James White, it's because the concept, the 2520, becomes a controversy in the church. And they see Edison more able to solve the mess. And instead of Edison comparing notes with Miller, he comes up with his own version, which he gives evidence and arguments why he thinks Miller was wrong. We know that Miller was not wrong because the 2520 was a second testimony why they needed to see Christ coming. So we need to see us being able to solve that mess. So unfortunately, I didn't have time to harmonize, but we might do that in our next class. But what I've tried to do today is to demonstrate how we approach the issue differently with a more robust methodology to be able to see, number one, there are two ends. And I'm suggesting, I don't have time to prove it now, the first end, this one, we will do that in our next class. This is 1798, this one. And the time appointed, the last end, is 1844. This one, though there is 43 there. This is where Hiram Edison's prophecy ends. This is where William Miller's prophecy ends. Are we together? Both of them are correct. That's what they really actually needed to understand. Edison dealt with the first end of indignation. Miller dealt with the last end of indignation. So both of them are correct. Number two, we need to understand there are two times. Time of the end, and this is the time appointed. These two times, one is the time of the end. This must be the time appointed. We will solve that in our next class. Then I came to the concept of geography and suggested you need to factor in Daniel 12 to solve the puzzle here, because the story that is in Daniel 8 is continued in Daniel 12. Factoring this in mind, that the story from Daniel 10 to 12 is one vision, which we used to call a Kazon vision. And what a Kazon vision is the complete vision. So what Gabriel came to explain to Daniel is the entire vision. How this kingdom, how the daily will be taken out of the way progressively, kingdom after kingdom, until the crown comes to the owner. And the entire story, as much as it deals with that, I wish I had time to go through Daniel 11, some bits, which actually give us more information, but we will do that in our next class. We also need to understand the conversation in Daniel 8 is the conversation in Daniel 12. The question asked in Daniel 8, where are the answers given? The answer given here is a different story, the 2300 days. These are the answers that Daniel ought to have received in this conversation. And when you put them side by side, you can be able to see that what is given is one aspect of the desolating power. There is a he, and this he scatters holy people for how long? A time, times, and the dividing over. And what period is this? This is the he who is going to scatter the power of the holy people for how long? So one answer is given. In our next class, we will be able to continue here and show if this is the abomination that maketh desolate. Where do we get information of the daily? This daily here. So you can take this daily and put it here, and we will be able to solve all that. I want to stop there because of time. So, because I know I've broken the rules, I will not take questions now. You can ask them later in Q&A, but I'll just invite us for a word of prayer. Thank you, Lord, for this wonderful moment. We are so grateful for giving us a chance to come and review our minds on past truths. As truth continue to shine on us, help us to establish ourselves perfectly, because this is the moment we actually have. This is the probationary time that we have to equip ourselves with the right message for the troublous times ahead. Continue praying, continue blessing us. We pray that even those who didn't manage to come, we pray for them wherever they are. We believe that we are actually united by this message. As we now break for our lunch and break, we ask that you still be with us until the end of the day. For I do pray this in Jesus' name.